Awesome.
All right.
We good.
Okay.
Well, Daryl, I got a little intro here, and then we'll just jump right into it, man.
Sounds good, man. Sorry about all the
No,
technology is like way above my my.
you
my
know
level.
what? Technology is allowing us to do this today, which I'm very grateful for. So,
Yes.
right on. So, everyone, Daryl Davis, a living, breathing hero in the fight against racism and against the quietness of the piano, of course. An ideological war with victories deep in the trenches of the KKK while satisfying his lust for boogie woogie blues on stage with Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, and B.B. King. Are you kidding me? Why put your arm around a grand wizard of the KKK and call him a friend? This man must be insane. Well, in the key of C, like no other. Everyone, it is my utmost pleasure and privilege to speak today with one of my living heroes, Mr. Daryl Davis. Welcome to the Pangburn Hangout, sir.
Thank you, Travis. It's a real pleasure to be here. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. So first off, how is life?
Life is good, man. Keeping me pretty busy. Keep me on the road, but off the street.
Right on. That's good. So how often are you on the road?
Oh, man. During non-pandemic times, anywhere from 180 to 220 days a year. And, but that's all starting to come back. Things are opening up. I'm doing a lot of traveling and, doing a lot of work, gigging musically and also lecturing.
Right on. Yeah, I produce live music and, of course, live intellectual discussions. And I've noticed that the market's making a bit of a comeback. It's coming back after COVID. So it's a really good thing. So I first wanted to talk to you about Boogie Woogie because
All right.
I can't be sure exactly at what age I started playing, but it was very young. Some of my earliest memories are of me trying to master the left hand, get that thing moving like Jerry Lee. So the first thing I wanted to ask you is just kind of the origins of how you got into blues and probably later on Boogie Woogie. How did that start?
Okay, well, let's go back to my childhood. When I was young and entertaining ideas of what I wanted to be when I grew up, there were two vocations that were pulling at me in opposite directions with equal force. So I couldn't move either way, right? I was immobilized. On one hand, I wanted to be an espionage agent, a spy. My hero was James Bond. And to this day, I still have my 007 briefcase where you press the handle and it fires plastic bullets, and my James Bond decoder belt and all that. But anyway, so I wanted to be a spy. The other side of me, now understand, I'm 65 years old, so I predate you by decades, right?
Yeah.
So the other side of me wanted to be a computer programmer. And back then, when I was a kid, computers took up this whole room, even more than this whole room you see behind me. I knew that eventually they would get small. I never dreamed that or smaller. I never dreamed that they would get, as small as your cell phone or your wristwatch or whatever. But I knew there was money to be had, and they would go down in size. So each vocation was pulling at me, and for years I kept trying to figure out how can I do both. But back then there was no way to do both. Today, of course, you can. It's called cyber espionage, but that term did not even exist. So I thought about people that I admired a great deal, and I always liked music. I couldn't play anything, but I always liked music. And instantly, two names came to mind. One was Elvis Presley, and the other one was Chuck Berry. And what I admired about those two gentlemen was the fact that they had made millions upon millions of people all over the world happy with their music. They had touched those people that they would never even meet, never even know. And perhaps those people had never even seen them live, but they heard the music on the radio, or they bought the records, or if they were lucky enough, they went to a concert or saw them on TV. But what are the chances of them meeting those people? So, that's really cool to be able to affect somebody with your talent that you don't even know. That's what I want to do. I want to learn how to play music and make people happy.
Yeah, that's so cool. That totally hits me right in the chest with what music really means to me. It's one of those only things that I really like, even if I don't feel like playing myself, the potential happiness that family members or people around me might get out of me playing music like that's always just been it made it not even a question to sit down and start pounding away,
Right.
Have you broke? Yeah, go ahead.
To answer your question about the Boogie Woogie, so, I like all kinds of music, but that rock and roll, really hit home with me.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah. So, I wanted to, so I decided, okay, well, I'm going to play music. And I like the music of Elvis and Chuck Berry and Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, Fats Domino, all those great rock and roll pioneers. So in order to play that kind of music and play it authentically, you had to listen not only to them, but what were they listening to? There was no rock and roll before Chuck Berry. So how did he come up with that? What was he hearing? He was hearing blues. He was hearing boogie woogie. He was hearing country. So I began listening to people that influenced him.
Right.
And that's where I discovered people like Pinetop Perkins and, great, legendary boogie woogie players.
Yeah.
And
well,
T-Bone Walker and all that.
Yeah. What do you think of Little Richard? Because he's very famous for saying he started it all, right? Do you agree with that? Like, do you think he was one of the founding fathers?
He was absolutely one of the founding fathers, no question about it. Both Chuck and Little Richard. Yeah. Absolutely. They were the cornerstone of rock and roll. And then, Bo Diddley, Fats Domino, but Richard and Chuck had that beat. All right. And what differentiates rock and roll from other genres like country, like jazz, like swing, is the rhythm, the beat. Swing is right. Rock and roll is boom boom bop boom boom bop boom boom bop. That backbeat, the hard 2 and 4.
Yeah.
Like the Chuck Berry song, rock and roll music. It defines it. Just let me hear some of that rock and roll music any old way you choose it. It's got a backbeat, you can't lose it.
Yeah.
Right. Man. So that's what it is. And so they were the cornerstone. Other artists like Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, Buddy Holly, they took that and popularized it because they had access to the white radio stations that the black artists did not have, because a lot of white stations, not all, but a lot of white stations would not play black records.
Right.
And now you had these white guys doing this black music, so the music got played, but coming out of the talents of the white artists. So that also opened the doors for the black artists. Right.
What was it like being around people like Jerry Lee? When they
I love Jerry Lee Lewis, man. He was my friend. All those guys, I loved them all. I got a chance. I met everybody. I didn't meet Buddy Holly. He died in 1959. I was born in 58. I did not meet Bill Haley. He was around while I was alive, but I never got a chance to see him live. But I saw everybody else. I met everybody else. I met Bo Diddley, Elvis, Jerry Lee, Richard, Chuck. I worked with Chuck for 32 years. I did a lot of shows with those other guys. There might be like a rock and roll festival, a rock and roll revival. Might be Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee, Little Richard, Chubby Checker.
Chubby Checker. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's my buddy.
Yeah. Oh man, that's just. Hey, does the name Honey Boy Edwards?
I played with Honey Boy.
No
Edwards.
Way, really?
Yes, I did, man. That was, my goodness, man. He was way back in the day of Robert Johnson, my friend, and he's played with Pinetop Perkins too. I did I was the director of a blues camp out in Washington State, and we would bring in different artists. And Honey Boy was one of the oldest living legends at the time, and we brought him in.
I was in university doing. I was what was called a resident technician. It allowed me to make a bit of money through the university, working in our university theater when groups would come through. And Honey Boy Edwards was on his last tour, and I think he must have been 96, man. Yeah. And he was up there drinking a Molson Canadian beer, and plugging away on the guitar and singing at 96. And I was just like, that and that theater only held like maybe 300 people. There must have been another 300 trying to get in, raging mad to see this man play. And we had to turn on the intercom so people in the lobby could hear some of what he was doing. Man, was that a show. But
he was a legend. He's
just an absolute legend. And I couldn't believe he was able to play and sing that way, exert that much energy at that age. That is a power that must come from the deepest level of the passion within us. Like that, I'll never forget watching that and being like, I'm dumbfounded by it. I still am.
As the saying goes, you don't stop playing music because you get old. You get old because you stop playing music.
Yeah. And I really looked up to, as a young man, I saw videos of Jerry Lee Lewis playing, and I always tried to mimic his moves, man, of, playing up in the higher keys with the back of my heel, like, and when I even did some gigs playing my own Trav Lee Lewis show where, I would do my impersonations and tried to get it. I could never get the hair right. My hair curls too much. He had that straight hair, but man, that music, it was kind of like you described. There was something about that rhythm.
Jerry Lee and his first cousins, Jimmy Lee Swaggart and Mickey Gilley.
Jimmy Swaggart,
they were all from Faraday, Louisiana, and there was a black juke joint across the railroad tracks called Haney's Big House, and the three of them as kids would sneak across the tracks and go there and, watch those black boogie woogie piano players play in there. And that's where they got that style. All three of them could play. Jerry was probably the most proficient player of the three.
Just so much energy, and a lot of, the energy was something with him, and the speed being driven by that energy he could bring to the piano was just madness to me. So that's it's exciting to be able to talk to someone that is also in love with boogie woogie music, because man, it's hard for me to find anyone. I know a lot of pianists, but none of them play boogie woogie. None of them really play much blues. So
you've been hanging out with the wrong crowd, son.
Well, I'm up in Canada. I have a limited.
Where are you in Canada?
I'm in Vancouver right now.
Oh, okay. I did a lecture in Vancouver a few years ago with some former white supremacists.
Oh, okay, very cool. I wish I would have heard about that. I would have been, first in line to see something like that. Do you ever come up and play music?
I got a friend up there in Vancouver who plays boogie woogie piano. Yeah, Kenny Wayne.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Michael Casehammer, but no, Kenny Wayne. I don't know. No.
Yeah, not Kenny Wayne Shepherd. Kenny Wayne.
Oh, okay. I'll have to look him up, because any chance I can get. The BB King blues groups that go on the cruise ships. I've gotten to see some pretty nice music there, and a few good boogie woogie slappers as well on those ships.
I just came off the blues cruise. I just played it.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay. Yeah. So you get on there and do that too. Oh, okay. That's cool. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, I was so impressed, man. Like the price of what it took to cruise to Alaska, I would have paid 10 times over to see the level, the caliber of music I was seeing in the BB King Blues Lounge on the ship, man. That was insane. I couldn't. I still am vibrating from the being exposed to that talent. It's wild stuff.
What you need? How old are you?
I'm 35, almost 36. Yeah.
What you need to carry? When will you be 36?
April 20th.
Okay, so you're an Aries.
Sure.
Yeah, I am too. I'll be 65 in a couple of weeks.
Wow.
But you need to carry that torch, man. Because you're younger than the rest of us. So, you got those chops. Get out there and carry that torch.
Yeah. I sometimes feel as though I want to get out there and perform once in a while still. My stuff at what I do philosophically now and through building my community, it kind of eats up every second of my time. But, man, I do feel it, the urge to get out there and make those strings smoke just one night, man. That's all. That's all I need. So cool. And have you ever done any gigs in Vancouver or anything?
I haven't played in Vancouver. I just spoken there, but I've played in Manitoba, in Winnipeg. I've played all over Ontario, Elliott Lake, Kitchener, Toronto, different places.
Well, we got to keep talking because we got to get you up to Vancouver to play some Boogie Woogie, because
Let's do it. Absolutely.
That would be better than fucking awesome. Pardon
All
my
right,
French.
let's do it.
Okay, moving on to the issue of racism. So, in your book, Clandestine Relation,
Relationships,
relationships. And in your TED Talk, you outline your amazing journey, and everyone, I think everyone who's going to come to this podcast knows about this. But you outline your amazing journey to battling racism through conversation and friendship, is the way I would describe it, which is, by the way, what I think is the right way to go about this issue. I thought I would just lay out a few points and then hand it over to you and see what you think. So you were a victim of racially motivated hate crimes when you were just a young boy. At the age of 10, you formed a question in your mind: how can you hate me when you don't even know me? At 10. And this motivated you to collect and read books that relate to the issue of racism to gain a better understanding. These didn't provide you an answer to your question, at least one that satisfied you. So now enter Roger Kelly. As an adult, you finally thought of a way to finally get an answer to this. You had an idea. What was that idea?
My idea was, okay, so since none of the books provided me with the answer, and I have a whole library, I'm serious, a whole house full of books, starting when I was a kid, and even today I still buy them, on black supremacy, white supremacy, anti-Semitism, racism, the Ku Klux Klan, the Nazis in Germany, the neo-Nazis over here. All the books talk about it, but they don't explain why. And when I would ask people, why are people like this? And they would just, oh, Daryl, that's just how it is. Some people are just like that. Well, that does not tell me why. So I decided that I would write a book on the Klan. Who better to ask that question of than someone who would go so far as to join an organization that now has over 157-year history of practicing hating people who don't look like them or who don't believe as they believe. So there had been no books written on the Klan by black authors from the perspective of sitting down and interviewing them face to face.
Right.
That's what I wanted to do. So I decided I'm going to travel the country and I'm going to interview Klan leaders and Klan members and write that book. And I'm going to ask them that question that I had since the age of 10. How can you hate me if you don't even know me?
Why did you want to do that? Most people are just like, I know you have your fundamental question, and I'm sure a lot of, probably a lot of black individuals have asked that question to themselves before. But what is it about Daryl Davis that says, I'm going to do it? Like, that's a big thing.
Daryl Davis had an upbringing that most black, and for that matter, most white American kids did not have of my generation. My parents were in the U.S. Foreign Service, U.S. State Department. So I grew up as an American embassy kid, traveling all around the world, starting at the age of 3 in 1961. Every 2 years, I was living in a different country and coming back home here to the States in between. So I was exposed to a wide variety of skin colors, ethnicities, cultures, social behaviors, and all kinds of different things that all impacted me and who I am. My first exposure to school was overseas. Kindergarten, first grade, third grade, fifth grade, seventh grade. I did part of second grade overseas as well. And my classmates were from Japan, Russia, Nigeria, France, Germany, Italy. Anybody who had an embassy there in those countries, all of their kids went to the same school. So that being my first exposure to school, that became my baseline as to what school was supposed to be, right? But and we all got along. Maybe we didn't look alike, we didn't speak the same language or worship the same way, but we all got along. We played together, worked together, had slumber parties, etc. Every time I'd come home, I would either be in an all black school or a black and white school, meaning the still segregated or the newly integrated. Even though desegregation was passed 4 years before I was born, it was passed by the Supreme Court in 1954, Brown versus the Board of Education. Schools did not integrate overnight.
Right.
It took, years and years, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't understand this. I didn't understand this at all. How is it that I can go across the Atlantic Ocean, across the Pacific Ocean, to some foreign country way on the other side of the planet and be treated better than I'm being treated in my own country? So that is probably the impetus to your question as to why I had to address this thing. And that brings me to my very favorite quote of all time. It's called the Travel Quote by Mark Twain. And Mark Twain said, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. And many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime." And that is so true. And now, all that listen, between my childhood and now my adulthood as a musician playing around the world, when you combine those two sets of travels, I've played in all 50 states. I have been to 62 countries on 6 continents. All that travel does not make me a better human being than anybody else. But what it does is it gives me a better and broader perspective on humanity than most people who have not had that kind of exposure.
You believed you could make a change. Most people don't believe that. That's the thing that perplexes me here.
Yeah. you said, and you were right. You said that when I was 10, I was a victim of racism. Okay? So now you have a choice. Yes, you can be victimized. I was victimized. But when somebody is victimized, they have a choice. They can remain a victim or they can do something about it. I chose to do something about it. Simple as that.
And you chose to do something about it, but you.
So I'm no longer a victim.
Sure.
And people, I experience racism,
right.
But I don't allow it to victimize me.
So, and how did you come to the realization that you must ground this in good faith, in helpfulness, in friendship? Like, where did that come from? Where did you get that idea? Because I think this is as revolutionary as Elon Musk, what he's doing with SpaceX. I'm serious. Look,
okay.
Where did it come from?
Okay. You've heard it, even though you're like half my age or a little more than half my age, but you heard it when you were a kid. We all did. A tiger does not change its stripes. A leopard does not change its spots. It is what it is, right? So why would we think that a supremacist or a Klansman or a neo-Nazi or whatever would change their swastika or change their robe and hood or change their ideology? That's who they are. All right? Well, that's half right and half wrong. The half right part is, yes, a tiger cannot change its stripes and a leopard cannot change its spots. They were born with those stripes and spots. That's who they are, okay? A Klansman, a neo-Nazi, is not born with that robe and hood or that swastika. That is a learned behavior. What can be learned can be unlearned, okay? I saw white people all over the world. In Europe, I lived in Europe. I visited many countries in Europe. When I was in Africa, I lived in Africa for a while. There were white people over there who, my fellow Americans, or people from other embassies, French embassy, German embassy, Swedish, etc. They didn't behave the way some of my white peers behaved over here. So it didn't have anything to do with the color of their skin. It had more to do with their attitude. An attitude is something that you acquire, and it changes over time, and it can be influenced and impacted. So I never, and here's a mistake that a lot of people make because they just make an assumption. I never got into this to convert anybody. All I wanted was the answer to my question. Listen, just tell me, please. All you see is this. You don't even know me, the color of my skin. Just tell me. How can you hate me? You don't even know me. You just met me 2 minutes ago. And then once I get my answer, goodbye, thank you. We never have to see each other again. But something happened. When I would talk with these people one on one, yes, I heard a lot of hateful things, a lot of offensive things, but I also found some things in common. I found plenty of things in common because you start out this far apart and you talk with your worst adversary for 5 minutes. You're going to find something in common, and that gap closes a little bit, right? You talk a little bit more, it closes some more because you found more in common. When you get here, you are having a relationship with the person that hates you and that you have no respect for.
Yes.
You keep on talking, it gets even closer. When you get here, you're having a friendship. You may not agree on everything, but when you get here, you have found so much in common that the trivial things you have in contrast, such as whether you go to like skin color or whether you go to a church, a synagogue, a mosque, or a temple, begin to matter less and less. And then that person thinks, I don't know why I hated that person. He's really no different than I am. So, and when the first person changed, it to me it was like a fluke. Like, whoa, what happened here, right? And it wasn't overnight; it was over time. But then it happened again and again and again, and I kept thinking, you know what? I need to keep doing this because I'm on to something. So I got to keep doing this. A missed opportunity for conversation is a missed opportunity for reconciliation.
Right.
And so it began happening, and that's why I'm still doing it today.
Man, this is what you're talking about, and I do credit you often with someone who, when I was in university, when I first started going to university, I found your work and what you've done and what you continue to do, and I was trying to talk to people because I was surrounded by a lot of cancel cultists, the people who are just basically like, okay, if you come across someone with a really bad idea, throw them in the closet, get rid of them, and I always thought, well, if you throw them in the closet, these people are going to have kids. They're gonna find other people who are thrown in the closet, and these bad ideas are just going to fester. It's like it just, this made sense to me, and I found your work, and I was like, this guy fucking gets it, and he's actually doing the thing that I want to do. I want to be able to put my arm around those that you may disagree with, in a friendly manner, and engage in good faith in a genuine way, and in a helpful manner. And one thing, I ground my moral quest in maximizing well-being for myself and those around me. And and this includes people who have ideas that I disagree with. So I just think that this is all really good stuff. And my community is based on these principles of that. Everyone's welcome regardless of what your ideas are, because the way I see it, people's ideas change like the wind, and it doesn't matter how dogmatically committed to them they seem. Like, I've seen people who were dogmatic Christians, a month later, when it couldn't possibly be the case that their belief was wrong, a month later they come back and they're like, you know what, I've deconverted. And it's just, I see this happen all the time. It's not like
I do too.
Yeah, and you went into
you made a point.
Yeah.
You probably didn't even realize, but you made a point, and you defined the way that we should be. And this is not the way these counterculturists or countercultists behave. You said, okay, they want to, throw them in a closet and get rid of them because it's a bad idea. Okay, but see, that is the short-term solution. Just remove them from the space.
Yeah.
But you are looking at the long-time result, which is, they're going to all be in the closet together, and they're going to produce kids, and they're going to be the same way. It's just going to perpetuate the situation. So you're seeing the long-term vision, and the counter people are just seeing the temporary, quick solution. So this is why, we need to extend their range of vision. Say, okay, fine, throw them in the closet, but then what? You're not thinking beyond today. What about tomorrow and next year and 10 years down the road?
Yep. And we need more big picture thinking with regards to our problems in society. Enough of this Band-Aid over whatever approach. It harms our children, because our children are the ones that have to fucking deal with it when it inevitably boils over. So yeah, man, this is the good stuff. So how many has it been? How many ticks on the helmet? How many robes have you collected? I've read 200. Maybe it's got to be more.
Well, I don't have 200 rows, but over 200 now have left, that ideology. I've been the impetus for them to leave the ideology. I don't want to say that I converted them, but I was the impetus for them to convert themselves. I probably, at this present time, I haven't counted recently, but I have probably, I say 58 to 65 robes and hoods. But I have tons of stuff. I have over a couple hundred items, whether it's a flag, a clan belt buckle, or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's phenomenal. And do you stay in touch with those people? Do they kind of...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you listen, Travis, when you make friends with me, you got a friend for life.
I'm that way too. I've been that way my whole life. Like, I've had many people who haven't been good friends to me in that same way, but that's just my nature, man. It's like and even if things happen, shit happens in life, and people you might not be able to speak for whatever reason for 10 years, but then they come back and I'm just like ready to pick it up. I don't live in that, like, that negativity that might be the past, but yeah, I feel that, man. Like,
but see, when you do, you are re-victimizing yourself.
100%. I see people do that all the time, man.
And they wonder why they can't get ahead.
It's a bug and not a feature. A lot of people think it's a feature because they're in kind of this suffering avoidance calculus where they're like, well, that happened to me then. I'm going to apply that to my future relationships and make sure it doesn't happen. Then all of a sudden they've narrowed their range of who can be friends with, and then they can't find any friends, and then all of a sudden no one's being friendly back to them. It's this nasty thing.
Isn't that what was a German philosopher's name?
A lot of them.
Hermann Niemöller.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, who said, first they came for the trade unionists and I didn't speak up. Then they came for the Catholics and I didn't speak up, and so forth. On and on. And finally, they came for me and there was no one to speak up. That's because they narrowed their thing. Yeah, man. We can find so many examples in history of this. So these conversations with these people that you, quote unquote, converted, whatever, the way we want to put it. How do those conversations go? Take me through a little bit of how you come. I want to get to the art of the conversation. Okay, well, a white supremacist or a black supremacist for that matter, are not stamped out of a standard cookie cutter. They come into that ideology from different routes in their life, different avenues. Sometimes it's because my grandfather was in the Klan. My father was in the Klan. I'm in the Klan, so my kids are going to be in the Klan. It's a family tradition passed down. Other times it might be the person moves into some rural town, that has a lot of Klan there or whatever, and town is, good old boy network. So if you want to do business there, you got to assimilate. You join the local country club, join the local chamber of commerce, and join the local KKK, and then you're on your way. Other times it might be an economic thing where, you've lost your job because a company laid you off and replaced you with somebody who just came here from another country, legally or illegally, but they know they can pay that person this much money to do the job that you were doing, and you were getting paid that much money. And so the Klan will come into a town like that and say, hey, the blacks have the NAACP, the Jews have the ADL. Nobody stands up for the white man but the Ku Klux Klan. Your job's not gone, but you're gone. Come join us. We'll get your job back. Yeah. And people who were not even racist to begin with. They've been working for these companies for years and making money and paying their bills. And now they're out of work. The bank is knocking on their door for the mortgage. And it's like, well, hey, I guess they're right. My job is still there, but somebody else is doing it. Well, what do I have to lose? Sign me up. Let's see if they can get my job back. So depending upon how they come into that ideology may determine how I approach them and what kind of questions I ask. But generally, I ask, what they're into, what are their hobbies, what do you like? Just general conversation. Oh, you like James Bond? Well, yeah, I like James Bond too. You prefer Sean Connery or Roger Moore or Daniel Craig or whoever, you know? You find things that are general. Like, for example, you believe that we need to get drugs off the street. You believe that we need better education for kids. Well, guess what? So do some of them. So, you work on things that you might have in common, and then you narrow that gap, and then you start getting into the particulars. So, what brought you into the Klan? Oh, well, some black guy broke into my house and stole a bunch of stuff. Okay, well, fine. Some white guy could have broken into your house too and done the same thing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it could be any kind of crazy reason.
Yeah, yeah, and you mentioned education there, and through this dialectic you're engaging in, you're part of the education, and part of not even reminding for some people, just for the first time they're hearing like some kind of logical challenge where they're like, well, that could have been a white guy. Right. Oh, well, they don't challenge each other like that in these kind of like cult-like groups that have very much this in-group behavior and analysis of things, and anything from the outside is just, that's an outsider. We're not going to deal with that.
I'll give you an example of something. And I've heard this a million times, so I'll composite it for you, because I've been doing this now for like 41 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll say, how can you hate me? And one of them will say, well, Mr. Davis, you have to understand something. Black people are prone to crime. And this is evidenced by the fact that there are more black people in prison than white people. Well, what this Klan leader is saying is 100% absolutely true.
Right.
In this country, there are more blacks in prison than white people. The data and the statistics will indicate that. And that's all they need to reinforce their narrative, is that data.
Right.
But they don't bother to look beyond the data. Why does the data say that? The data just reports what's in there. It doesn't say why they're in there, right? Mm-hmm. And then they'll go ahead, and say, blacks are inherently lazy, that we don't want to work. We prefer to scam the government welfare system. We always have our hand out for a freebie, Now, in reality, in this country, yes, there are more blacks in prison than whites, and the data does indicate that, but they don't bother to go back and check and see, is there an imbalance in our judicial system that sends more blacks to prison than whites who have committed the same crime? In this country, there are more whites on welfare than blacks, because there are more whites in this country, all right? And then the guy will tell me, black people are born with a smaller brain than white people. And see, you have to understand, the larger the brain, the more capacity for intelligence. The smaller the brain, the lower the IQ. And this is evidence, he tells me, by the fact that every year, black high school students score lower on the SATs, the Scholastic Aptitude Tests, than white kids. Again, he is 100% correct. Yeah. Overall, black kids do score lower than white kids on the SATs. All right, the data shows that. The statistics show that. So that's all he needs to reinforce what he believes. But he doesn't bother to look. Where do most black kids in the United States go to school? In the inner city. Yeah. Where do most white kids go to school? In the suburbs. It's a well-known fact, not an opinion. Inner city schools are not as good as suburban schools. They don't have the funding. They don't have this, that, and the other. Black kids who go to school in the suburbs can score just as high, if not higher, than some of the white kids. White kids who go to school in the inner city can score just as low. Some will score lower than some of the black kids. It has absolutely nothing to do with the color of the student's skin or the size of the student's brain, but it has everything to do with the educational system in which that student is enrolled.
Yeah.
But see, they don't bother to look into that because, the data reinforces what they already think.
Right.
So here's what happens. All right. So I just sit back and listen to somebody who's only walked into my room and hasn't known me for more than 5 minutes is already calling me a criminal based on my skin color, telling me that I'm lazy and I'm on welfare and that my brain is small, so I'm dumb. So is what the guy's saying offensive? Yes, it's offensive. Am I offended? Absolutely not. And you know why? Because I know who I am. If I'm offended by it, then I become the victim. I know who I am. He doesn't know me. So why should I allow him to define me by telling an untruth? If
Yeah.
my mother and father were to say, Daryl, we think you're prone to crime. You're kind of acting kind of shady. Or Daryl, you're lazy. You don't clean up your room and so forth and so on. And you know what? You're kind of dumb. Maybe I would believe them because they brought me into this world and they raised me. But not somebody who walks in my room and all they see is the color of my skin and they're telling me I'm a criminal and I'm lazy and I'm dumb. Okay? Why should I believe that? I know who I am. If you don't know who you are, you got no business going into the room with those people because they will tell you who you are and you will walk out believing them.
I get a
and
sense.
Re-victimize yourself.
Yeah. I get a sense that you've kind of always understood the humor of this.
Yeah.
Like once you started working on your projects and your book and stuff, like all of that stuff that you're saying, like if someone makes these vast generalizations about someone just based on the color of their skin, like that is comedic gold. Like when I was young, and I understand this could be offensive, but that just seems like the stupidest thing someone would do. And it's like stupid in like a slapstick thinking way. Like it's like slapstick thinking or something. It just, you make correlation causation fallacy
Right.
and like all that stuff that comes with it. It's just, there's something very funny about it, but also on the other hand, of course, to people who are offended, who do feel offended and they feel hurt by it, it's also carries a lot of weight.
Yes. Now, and then here's what happens. Okay. I listen. So, when the person first comes in the room and they see me or see somebody who looks like me, automatically their defenses go up because I am the enemy. And there's nothing I can say to them when they're in this frame of mind. Their ears are plugged to anything I have to say. They know the truth. I'm the inferior one. They're the superior one. And, I have nothing to offer them. They're going to tell me how it is. So it's no point even arguing with somebody in that frame of mind. Just let them get it all out. But see, they're used to pushing people's buttons. And then when they push somebody's buttons, that person's going to fight back. Let your emotions get carried away and you punch back. And then the whole conversation devolves and then it's over, right? So when I just sit back and listen to them, that wall begins coming down, And as the wall comes down, the ears become unblocked. So by the time they finish, exhausting all their vitriol on me, they're all the way down and their ears are wide open because they're wondering, why the hell isn't this guy pushing back?
Yeah, they look back at you and they see that you're still listening.
Yeah, exactly.
You got anything?
They want to know why.
Yeah.
So now they are receptive to what I have to say.
Yeah.
And that's when I began explaining what's behind the data. And then here's what happens, Travis. They don't change right then and there. They hear what I'm saying. Because if I said that, it's now my turn to speak. Because, they finished talking and telling me who I am. Right? So now they want to know how come I didn't push back on them. Right? I could go on the offense and say, no, you are the criminal. You're the one hanging black men from trees and bombing black churches and dragging them.
Like every other person does, almost everyone. Yeah.
Okay. And guess what? Every other person is 100% correct. But if I did that, that wall would go right back up. Those ears would plug up and they wouldn't hear a word I have to say. I want those ears to remain open. I want their wall to remain down. Okay. So just so I can plant a seed, just impart some facts. So I tell them behind the data what happens. I don't attack them. I just defend my position. So then when they go home, just like you will tonight or any other time, at the end of the day, you reflect upon what you did during the day. And they're going to be thinking, man, I just had a 3-hour conversation with a black guy, and we didn't even come to blows. Yeah, we got a little loud here and there, but, we didn't even, yell at each other and try to beat each other up. And then they start thinking about some of the things I said, what that Daryl guy said is true. Oh, but he's black. But what he said made sense. Oh, but he's black. So they're having a cognitive dissonance, and that's a struggle. That's a dilemma. It's very uncomfortable when that goes on. So it goes on for a while and it stresses them out. And so then they have to choose a path. Do they disregard the fact that I'm black and believe the truth because I gave it, because it's true, regardless of whether it came from a black person or not, and now they have to change their ideological direction? Or do they consider my skin color and keep living a lie just because I'm black and they know it's true? That's their dilemma.
Yeah.
And that's how they end up converting themselves.
Yeah, and it's so amazing. My mind is racing with all these instances I've had of the same thing. I speak to a lot of theists. You know, I'm an atheist currently, and I don't believe in the existence of any gods. I'm not convinced, but I've seen a lot of theists go through this, and atheists too, where they say, oh yeah, he did make some sense there, but he's an atheist. I can't forget that. It's like, oh, but he also made some sense when he started arguing about that. Oh, but he's an atheist, or vice versa, right? There's a lot of similarities, and I think what you're talking about that's
cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, exactly, cognitive dissonance. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I think, and I hope that people hear what you say, and they hear these examples, and they will engage in some of these skills of listening, being, and not just like acting as though you're listening, but genuinely listening to what this person has to say. Because I think people will also catch on if you're kind of just play acting as though you're like this person that's interested in what they have to say, but then you don't respond to anything that they've actually said, or, you know, the active listening versus, you know, having your eyes taped open.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to ask you the role of the internet. So when the internet started rolling out, do you think that had a positive impact? That is to say, we were seeing more like members of the KKK finding more information that contradicted their belief systems, or do you think it was kind of neutral or negative impact? What do you think?
Well, it depends. You can find whatever you want on the internet.
Yeah.
You know, it can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing. It's like fire. You know, if your house is cold, I can bring fire to your house and heat your house. If I'm pissed off at you, I can bring fire to your house and burn your house down. So, you know, that's the internet, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, the internet, you know, is a good tool, just like anything else, just like a gun. You know, in the wrong hands, it can do a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm. One thing I think about is, like, imagine, okay, you're a child growing up in a, let's say, white supremacist or KKK household, and you have some time on the internet. You might be able to stumble upon some other ideas that may contradict, where, you know, in such a closed household that maybe really controls the information that the children have access to, they might, you know, stumble upon some information more easily with the internet. But also, you know, there is the other side of that where, you know, I think
the wrong rabbit hole.
Yeah. We see people go down the wrong rabbit hole. So yeah. But I think ultimately, as part of what you say in your TED Talk and in your book, education is the antidote here.
That's right. That's right. Because, you know, listen, we all are ignorant, and I don't use the term ignorant in a derogatory context. I use it in the term of being unknowing, unaware. All right. We all are ignorant about certain things. You know, I'm not a mechanic. I cannot fix my car. I'm ignorant as to how those things work.
I am so ignorant to car mechanics as well, man. It's just, I'm lost.
I mean, I can go to school and learn it.
Yeah.
But, you know, it doesn't really interest me. So I go to an expert. Now, you know, you want to talk about Boogie Woogie? Come to me. You know, I can talk about that. But there are other things that I'm ignorant on. So ignorance leads to fear. We fear those things of which we are ignorant. I would never get out here and take apart my engine of my car because I'd be afraid I can't put it back together, right? And then my car is shot.
Right.
So ignorance leads to fear. If that fear is not kept in check, that fear will escalate and lead to hatred. We hate the things that frighten us, just like we fear the things of which we're ignorant. If that hatred is not addressed, that hatred will escalate and lead to destruction. We want to destroy the things that we hate. Why? Because they frighten us. But guess what? At the end of the day, They may have been harmless and we were simply ignorant. All right. Now, this goes for children as well as adults. For example, sometimes I speak to grade school kids. Of course, I tone it down when I do that. But so you have these these little fifth graders sitting at their desks in rows in the classroom, and I'm there talking to them. I'm just talking like I'm talking to you right now, and then all of a sudden I'll jump up and I'll point at down under somebody in the front row's desk at their feet. Say, hey, there's a snake under your chair, And just at my suggestion that there is a snake under somebody's chair in the front row, people all over the classroom, even 5 rows back, scream and throw their legs up in the air. Yep. As though that snake might be back there too, right? Just at the suggestion, right? It's right? And then they realize there's no snake there and they start laughing. And so then I asked them, why were you screaming? Why, were you getting all bent out of shape? Oh, I'm afraid of snakes. I hate snakes. There's your fear. There's your hate. I'm afraid of snakes. Fear. I hate snakes. There's your hate. Well, why do you hate snakes? Oh, well, they're slimy and they're poisonous. There's your ignorance. If you've ever touched a snake, it's not slimy. It's dry. Not all snakes are poisonous. That's your ignorance. So now, ignorance leads to fear. Fear leads to hatred. Now I say to them, okay, obviously there's no snake under your chair or under your desk. But let's just say there really was a snake under your desk, near your feet. What would you want me to do about it? Do you know what these 5th graders say? Kill it. There's your destruction. And these are little 5th graders.
Yeah.
Okay? So it goes from childhood to adulthood.
So the lesson here maybe is we shouldn't fear what we are ignorant of.
Why not try to learn about it? Okay?
Right.
We spend too much time. Okay, here is the ignorance. All right? You don't address it, it escalates into fear because we fear that of which we're ignorant. You don't keep that fear in check, that escalates into hatred. We hate the things that frighten us. You go to somebody, take them to the carnival, to the fair. Hey, you want to go on the roller coaster? Oh, no, man, I hate roller coasters. Why? Because they scare the hell out of me, okay? They hate them because it scares them. The fear leads to hatred, right? So then you say, so you don't keep that hatred in check. People start getting angry at the things they hate, and they want to destroy them, all right? So I say we spend way too much time, at least in this country, the United States, addressing the destruction. I say forget about the destruction. That's nothing but a symptom, a byproduct of the root cause, the nucleus. Forget about the hatred. That too is a symptom. Forget about the fear. That too is a symptom. The root cause is the ignorance.
100%.
If you cure the ignorance, then there's nothing to fear. With nothing to fear, there's nothing to hate. With nothing to hate, there's something to destroy. All right? So we need to invest our time, our money, our efforts, and our energy in supply. Listen, there's a cure for ignorance. The cure is education and exposure. That's where we need to invest our money, our time, our energy, and our efforts in providing education and exposure and eliminating the ignorance. And then all those other byproducts and symptoms will go away. If the cancer is in your bone, you can't put a topical cream on top of your skin.
Yeah.
You got to go down to the bone and hit it with that radiation or that chemo or whatever, right?
Yeah.
We put Band-Aids on stuff around here.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more about that. It's and a lot of the times people in the here and now, they like to do that because it affects their life in the here and now, but there's not that big picture view of, generations to come. And it's hard to sell that to people too, because it's like.
So what we have to do then is let's start teaching critical thinking
Sure.
in primary grade school. So cause and effect.
Yeah.
But, to tone it down, use simple little things. Before you make a decision, what would happen if we did this versus what would happen if we did that or that? Get these little kids thinking. And that way, they will always do that And don't try to change somebody once they reach college age. I mean,
Yeah.
they can change, yes, but they're pretty much set in their ways by that time.
Yeah, I think the greatest educational gift we can give to children is logic.
Yes.
Logic is at the base of so many systems that we abstract from, systems that are built on the backs of logic. So I do think that there is, with a lot of these ideologies that people fall into, if they had a solid foundation in logic, I think a lot of people would first, they wouldn't be there in the first place, but if they did find themselves there and they engaged in some moments of reflection, they would start seeing the logical fallaciousness of some of their beliefs and really be able to find themselves out. How do you feel like you've been able to view, and you've had your finger on the kind of the race relations, I think, in the United States for so many years now? How do you think things are now with regards to racism in the U.S.?
Okay, let me tell you what's going on here. The media does not talk about it, and they know about it. And why they don't talk about it, I don't know. Maybe they're afraid they're going to cause an uproar or something. All right, let's go back to the beginning. This country, the United States, was built on a two-tier society. Okay, white supremacy at the top, slavery at the bottom. And as we progress through the decades, we progress like this. Perhaps like this, but never like this. All right? When I was a kid, the black population in this country was 12%. Native Americans, 1%. Hispanic, Latino Americans, almost 2%. Asia Pacifica Americans, almost 3%. Whites were like 86, 87%. The U.S. Census is taken every 10 years. All you have to do is go to uscensus.gov and you can see the decades.
Yep.
Right? This is happening. In 2020, the white population in this country is 59%. 59%. Okay? Blacks remain at 12. We're like 12.9, so they say 13%. Native Americans haven't grown either. They're still at 1%. Asian Americans are at 6%, 5.9%. So they've almost doubled. Hispanic, Latino Americans have more than quadrupled. They're at 17 point something percent. So if you take just blacks and Hispanic people, 12 and 17, that right there by itself, let alone the Asians and Native Americans or anybody else, that right there, 17 and 12, is 29% non-white. This is happening. It is well predicted. And I learned this from the head of the American Nazi Party back in 1982. All right. He told me a lot of lies, but this is one thing that he said that was true. He said in the year 2042, which is now only 19 years from now. All right. For the first time, this country will be 50-50. 50% white, 50% non-white. Between 2045 and 2050, it's going to flip. And for the first time, whites in the United States will become a minority for the first time. You can see that. You can see that trend. All right. 2042 is the year. If you remember, do you remember Y2K?
Yeah.
Okay. People were freaking out, man.
Yeah.
At the end of 1999, when the calendar was going to roll over to 2000.
Yeah, the planes were going to crash. The computers going to explode. Yeah.
The VCR was not going to work anymore.
Yeah.
The whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
People were taking money out of their bank accounts and burying it in their backyard, hiding it under the bed, and then it rolled around just another day, right? 2042 is the white supremacist Y2K. They want to stop this. All right. But they can't. All right. Now, when you have sat on the throne of power for 400 years, you don't want to get off. Look at our last president. He was only there for 4 years and he thinks he's still there.
Right. The Donald.
They are trying to stop this. And what the white supremacists tell me, Proud Boys, alt-right, Klan, neo-Nazi, the whole 9 yards. Daryl, I don't want my grandkids to be brown. They call it the browning of America.
Why not?
And they call it the browning of America, or white genocide through miscegenation.
Right.
And they're fearing that. So they're very big on immigration. Now, they don't care if people, immigrate here from your country, from Canada illegally, or from Eastern Europe or the UK, because if their kids were to marry, somebody from there, the grandkids are going to be white. They're more concerned about South Americans, Mexicans, and West Africans. That's their bane.
Are you familiar with Jared Taylor?
I know Jared. I've been to Jared's house, man.
Okay. Yeah. So Jared
plays harmonica. I came
to his
really? House and I brought my keyboard and we jammed. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, because Jared came on my podcast, and you know how he is. He was the whites are being bred out, and by 2042. We are gonna start, and he brought that up, right? And he was just like, and then my question to him after all this, and it was almost like he expected me to be like, oh no, well this is no good. But I was just like, who cares? Like, well, right. What's the big deal? Like, it's skin color. This is the the whole thing with race. I've never understood this obsession people have, and it's almost like some kind of like fetish people have with race, and I don't get it. And I grew up in a small mountain village in the center of British Columbia, in Castle, British Columbia, and we didn't really have much racial diversity in my town, but it wasn't like that bred this like negative view in me towards other races, and I didn't even think it did. Yeah.
But your ancestors in your country did not own slaves.
True.
To the extent of this country.
Yeah.
So we were considered property, not and 3/5 of a human being. So now you're telling these people that no, that's not your property. That's those are human beings, and you have to treat them equally. Right. Oh no, we can't do that. We can't have our slaves eating at our dining room table and hanging out with our kids, and
like Django style.
Yeah. I know Jared Taylor. Yeah,
he was a nice enough guy. We had a nice enough conversation.
I like Jared. Yeah. I don't agree with a lot of things he says, but I like him.
Yeah, no, and I would definitely play music with him too. Like that's cool. Harmonica, man. I love the harmonica. I do a little bit of it with the kind of the neck gear. Do you ever do that? Do you throw the neck gear on? And no.
I don't play harmonica.
Not your jam, no.
I mean, I like it. I just never learned how to play it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Let's talk about your podcast. Are you still recording and putting up episodes?
I haven't done it lately. I've just been too busy, but I do want to, get back into it and find some more interesting people to talk with.
Yeah, you guys, the Changing Minds podcast on Apple, right. And I'm sure you can find it in other places too. It's about advancing minds, yours, ours, and the world's. So you guys should go out there and check out the episodes. Did you interview Jesse Lee Peterson?
I sure did.
Yeah, I talked to Jesse Lee on my podcast too. Yeah.
And he interviewed me about 3 weeks ago.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. He's a fun guy to talk with. He's a hilarious man. He always gets me laughing.
Now, do you think he believes what he says, or do you think?
I wrestle. I think some of it he does, but I also think he engages in a lot of this rhetoric to get a rise out of people. I think he's a mixed bag there. Kind of, I think there's a lot of people out there who kind of put out sensationalist content because it gets more clicks and things like that. But I do think, he is this kind of like man transported from the 1920s to now, and trying to like that's what he reminds me of. Like he's just been teleported or traveled through time, and he's here and he's like trying to like deliver the good word to the people in kind of a contemporary way. And but it's very strange. But I think he's, to me, when I watch his compilations of people trying to put up with him and have conversations, I find them quite humorous for sure. Yeah. So you guys do check out the podcast. I'm going to squeeze in a few callers here. We got about 15 minutes left.
Yeah. And when they check out the Changing Mind podcast, they had to put in Changing Minds with Daryl Davis,
Okay.
because apparently Changing Minds is a popular name for podcasts.
Yes, it is. I did notice that. Thank you for pointing that out. I think I'm going to move to this question. What is a good life?
What is a good, that's a good question. A good life, I would say, is somebody who is able to live comfortably, not live beyond their means, worry about where their next meal or dollar is coming from, and have a good sense of self, and be stress free, or stress minimalized. I think that is the key to success. Not having billions of dollars necessarily, and all the headaches that go with it, or not having any money at all, and having to knock on doors for food, or rob 7-Eleven or someplace like that. I think to be able to be comfortable, have friends who love you. That's key too.
Man, it's so weird when you talk, and I know it's because I've listened to you so much, and I do think in so many ways that were not always so obvious to me that I think and I conceptualize life in very much the same way that you do, and it sometimes feels like it's my own mind speaking through Daryl Davis, but. That's just fascinating to me. I'm going to take a caller here. Brett is one of our broadcasters here at Pangburn. Brett, you are live now with Mr. Daryl Davis.
Hey, can you guys hear me okay?
You bet.
Hey, Brett, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really good, Daryl. If my connection's bad, just let me know and I'll go to the chat. First off, really big fan of your work. I think you have the overall essence, as I would call it, that people need to have, seeing the heart of humans versus anything else. Trav, I'm not sure if you saw my question on Discord, but my question is essentially around, how do I word this? I'm really interested in understanding the why, where humans separate and not just tribalize, but, where hate comes from. And so I guess my question to you, my friend, is why do you think, besides, just our desire to get into groups, why do you think it is that humans have such a hard time seeing the humanity in other persons? I don't know if that's worded right, but take that as you will, because anything you say, I'm sure is going to be great.
Okay, that's an excellent question, Brett. And the way that I would answer it, and this is just my opinion based on my life and what I have experienced. Most people in my country, and perhaps in some other countries as well.
Sorry, Brett, can you mute, buddy? Thanks. We're getting a lot of noise there. Thank you.
Okay. So a lot of people don't have the benefit of travel or of exposure to diversity. I don't tribalize. Yes, you look at me, what am I? I'm black. Okay, fine. But I identify with everybody because that's what I was exposed to as a little kid, based upon my father's job, living in different countries, going to international schools. I was around kids all day long from different countries. So where was my tribe? Everybody was my tribe. So I think, if you don't have that at an early age, then some people tend to self-segregate. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're racist, but people tend to feel more comfortable around familiarity, things, that they can relate to. Like, for example, if somebody put out a poster on a public, street sign or something for a party this weekend, everybody's welcome. Bring your own booze, whatever. Formal attire. Well, most everybody there is going to be in formal attire. Say, suit and tie or tuxedo or gown, whatever. But one guy didn't read the fine print that said formal attire, and he shows up in leather and chains. His biker outfit, and comes in on his Harley. So now he sticks out in the crowd, but he's there. And then, half an hour later, some other biker shows up from another bike club, another biker gang. And he's like mystified, like, wow, all these people in, gowns and tuxedos. He sees the rival biker over there on the other side of the room who dresses just like him. Even though that guy is from a different bike club, he's going to go over there, even though he doesn't know that guy, because he feels familiarity. And so perhaps the key to it is, at a young age, begin exposing people or kids to more variety rather than just, International Day, one day a year or something. If you have dolls for your kids, G.I. Joes and Barbie dolls or whatever, get a whole collection of them of different, ethnicities, different skin colors, etc. Let them play with them all. Let them, especially if you're in a rural area where there are not human beings that don't look like you. Because, when we find even in a diverse city, you go to a school, a college, or a company, corporation that has diverse employees and students. These people may work together on the same project. They might even share the same cubicle. But what happens at 12 noon? They go downstairs to the cafeteria for lunch. And what happens? They self-segregate. Blacks sit with blacks. Hispanics sit with Hispanics. This group sits with the same group. All right. Now, if you try to go over to one of those other tables and somebody says, hey, no, we don't want you here. Go back to your table. There's a problem and it needs to be addressed. But I would say once or twice a week, get up from your comfort group at lunch in the cafeteria and walk across the cafeteria and sit at somebody else's table, because you have a lot to learn from them and you have a lot to teach them. And in the process, I'll guarantee you'll probably make a new friend. And this is what we need. Let's break away from those, familiar chains that are holding us into this narrow space, and let's broaden our horizons, because the world is becoming more and more diverse and you cannot stop it. So you might as well join it. Welcome to the 21st century.
Welcome to the 21st century. And ending on the note of everybody is my tribe. That's just a beautiful, beautiful message, Daryl. It's so great that you came on and shared your time with us today. I would love to rip the piano with you someday and get you up to Vancouver to play some music. And I just can't tell you enough how important I think your work has been throughout your career to so many people. And it definitely did change my life and allowed me to upgrade my software. So, sir, thank you very much for everything you've done.
Thank you so much. And I hope that, we can consider this to be part one, and one day we'll do a part two.
100%. Thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. Everyone, Daryl Davis. Woohoo! That was
thank you, Brett.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. That was just, one of the greatest thrills of my life. It's why I do what I do, to get into conversations like this. And Daryl Davis, as far as I'm concerned, he's a true living hero of intellectual discourse. He knows how to go about the war of ideas in the right way. Starting off, genuine, in good faith, helpfulness leads to building a friendship with your interlocutor, and allows for more openness when you're engaging in these really, really difficult topics like Daryl has engaged in throughout his career as a philosopher, because that's what I think Daryl is. And a mean ass boogie woogie piano player. You guys make sure you go out there and watch Daryl's content, watch his podcast. He's, this is just a short glimpse of Daryl Davis, what we've had here tonight. And I'm sure it has left you wanting more. It sure has for me. I'm definitely going to look hard at where I can expose the world in any way more to Daryl Davis, whether that means big live public discussions. Who knows? The sky's the limit. But Daryl Davis is the real deal and a true hero of mine. And thank you guys for being here today to experience this with me. Join us on Discord. I'm going to head over there. We'll be on Discord chilling. I think you guys have the link. Those of you on YouTube who joined us, thank you so much. And we'll catch you next time. This has been Travis Pangburn on the Pangburn Hangout, and I love you all.